Welcome to the Rediscover Radiance Podcast. Rediscover Radiance is a transformative podcast designed for corporate professionals who are embarking on a journey of self-reclamation. We believe that within each of us lies a radiant core, a place of authenticity, resilience, and purpose. Sometimes life's challenges can dim our inner light. Our mission, to help you reignite it. Let's meet your hosts. Lizzy Garcia, the curious guide, the seeker who asks the tough questions. Karen Great, the strength-based guide, the compassionate seeker who dives into the heart of matters. Together, they are on a mission to inspire you to reclaim your self-worth and glow with brilliance. Why rediscover radiance? Because you deserve to shine. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's embark on this radiant journey together. Remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits.
Welcome to Rediscover Radiance, our first episode. Today we're going to be discussing our why, which is super important. We want to set our intent for those who are tuning in, just so that you can learn about us, learn about why we're doing this, why we feel this is important, why we're passionate about rediscovering our radiance. So I'm Lizzy Garcia, and my intent on starting Rediscover Radiance is rooted in the fact that I myself have struggled with living my purpose and feeling as though I'm living my life and doing the things that bring me happiness, that bring me joy, that validate who I am at my core. And so for me, this is a journey, and I really am going on this journey with you all. I want this to be relatable. I want this to be accessible to everyone, no matter where you are in your life, where you are in your career. Even if you're, you own your own business, like Karen, or you're a stay-at-home parent. This is really just about, no matter where we are in our life, being able to rediscover and reclaim our inner light. And so that is why I'm here today, and I am super excited to go on this journey with Karen Great, who has most certainly been a mentor for me during one of the periods in my life in which I was really struggling and not feeling radiant in any way, shape, or form. And when this idea came to me, I knew, I was like, Karen has to go along on this journey with me. I can't do it alone. I need her. And so, Karen, I'll kick it over to you.
Oh, Lizzy, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. We are talking about rediscovering radiance today with our why. Setting good intentions is really important. I know through the years, just on a personal note, right, with yoga and Pilates, when I do that, right, we always set a good intention for what we're trying to accomplish. My intention today, very similar to Lizzy in many regards, is I want to be able to connect with you and the audience, and we want to really bring the audience and the best that we can during a podcast. And I was talking to Lizzy about this podcast, and it was sure enough just like that. I had literally worked with Lizzy only 4 months, and that was how we met. And those relationships are super impactful, because here we are. What's it been like 4 years later? And she thinks about this podcast idea, and it's like, yeah, I need my person. I need a partner to really bring that radiance out and others and back to myself. And I was sharing with Lizzy too, and I want to share with you all, is my intention here today is not to be corporate Karen. And, just even saying Karen, right, can give somebody a little bit of hair on their arms. But hopefully, if anybody spent any time with this Karen, you don't have that association of social media. So part of it is really just showing myself. I mean, you're sitting in my kitchen with me. We're having some coffee and we're talking together, because this is powerful stuff. This is real life stuff. Oftentimes in work and situations, we feel like we've got to maybe put a mask on. And, my commitment to you all is to really 100% show up authentically. This is me. Sometimes I'm put together, sometimes I'm not. And really, kind of digging into why would you want to listen to this podcast? We're real hopeful that anything that we might say can spark something for you, and anyone that we might bring in as a guest speaker sparks something for you. So that's our true why. So speaking of why, we have a few questions, right, that Lizzie and I are going to go back and forth on. And the first one is, why launch a podcast? So Lizzie, I'm going to kind of pose that question to you first, and then I'll give you some of my responses. So what launched you into this?
Yeah, so the podcast for me, it's a collection of moments throughout my professional career that have really defined my journey up to this point. I looked around and I realized that it has been hard for me to articulate my experience up to this point. And I think at times I'm also a little bit perplexed at where I am, where am I going, and coming outside of my head and speaking about this with you all is opening my eyes to the fact that I'm not the only one. It's easy for me to come across as having it all figured out, just accepting that I've gotten so far on this course that I'm at, so there's no way that I can turn around now. And so I'm challenging myself to be vulnerable. I want to rediscover my own inner radiance along the way, and I'm inviting all of you so that this expedition is not lonely. Adventures are always more fun when there's more than one, for sure.
Oh, isn't that the truth? What a great reason to really, express yourself, on social media, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, uh, Twitter, if that's still a thing at the moment, right? All of these different social media platforms, right? You see an image, you see a face. When, we were deciding to do this podcast, first of all, I had literally no designs on doing a podcast. I was like, I listened to them, and I listened to Masterclass and other things. But I was like, oh, I don't know. And Lizzie has such just a good energy to her. And then especially kind of hearing her path and her journey, and ours have aligned. And, it's really important to kind of speak our truth. And so for me, kind of my why is just really been a process of rediscovering my radiance. Somehow along the way, I let others impact the way that I show up and feel. And really, since the pandemic, and I know probably our listeners, same thing, right? Like 2020 was such a definitive time in our lives that we really can't go back. And in many regards, I'm glad I'm not going back. But in others, just like this podcast, I really never had any designs of running my own business. I have this kind of mode of, I really don't know that I want to have that sole responsibility. I like to be part of a team. I'm a huge extrovert, if anyone hasn't figured that out by now. But I have a lot of self-doubt creep in since 2020. I've been a professional for about 25 years, and 2020 was my first layoff. And I thought that the world was ending. It was a job that I really adored. If anybody's ever been in talent development or organization development, these programs that you develop and these people that you associate with, right? Like it's kind of like your baby, and you're nurturing it and you're growing it. You're going through maturity. Like I'd always say, training development, professional development, it is really about kind of from newborn infancy all the way through mature adolescence. And we were kind of getting there when that news came to me. And, I had, of course, my mourning moment, right? I mourned, I continued to mourn. And then I kind of, from the ashes, I said, well, okay, what's next? And that's when I launched a Great Learning was in 2020. And since that time, I have this false belief, right? That's a lot of what sometimes coaches bring out in you as you kind of explore is, am I good enough to run my own company? Am I good enough because I was so expendable in this organization? And, people always say, don't take it personally. It's not you. And it's like for some degree, you always do internalize it, and you always say this is it, and then guess what? you know, two more times after that. And so in a 4-year span, 3 layoffs. I mean, that erodes your radiance, right? And your essence of who you are, and it really questions you. So again, this podcast for me is about rediscovering me, and every day I learn something new and better about myself and bringing my true self forward.
I love that. You touched upon that. It took me a while. Um, we are creating things, when you're working a corporate job and you're creating things for someone else, essentially, because you don't own that company, right? Uh, we're creating all of these things. We're pouring our heart and our soul into these programs, into these initiatives, into the work, into the customers. We're learning the processes, we're creating the processes, we're doing all of these things. And each and every day we're showing up, we're giving it our all, we're putting all of our energy into that. And you do get something out of it when you're in the moment. You do feel like, okay, I'm doing something, I'm making a difference here. And then you said it, Karen, you feel that um you can just easily that can easily be thrown away. You can easily be cast aside. And I have been laid off as well in the past, and it does gut you, especially when you're in the middle. It seems to always happen when you're in the middle of something that you're pouring your heart into, and it hits you left field. And one of the things that I learned is that it's not our ideas are so valuable. They're more valuable than gold. And people, once they have your idea, they can take that and that now they have that treasure. And that's where you can find yourself cast aside. It's just something that naturally happens. They're like, you know what? We have this program. We have it off the ground. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Goodbye. Right? And then you walk away and you're like, what the heck? Why did that happen to me? How could they do this to me? Um, this is something that I created. This was my baby, essentially. This has my DNA in it. And what I've been learning is that yes, it's okay to put your heart into something to help a mission, a cause, an organization. That's most certainly okay. I'm not saying that that's not okay. But what are we doing in our personal lives? What are we doing aside from work, aside from all of that to pour our heart and our soul into? So for me, I've gotten into, I've gotten into a lot of DIY projects with my daughter, and that's starting to bring us a new purpose and new possibilities about, okay, now we have all these products. What do we do with them? Is this a business? What is this? That me and my daughter are creating. And I had to get to that point where I created those boundaries between my professional contributions and the contributions that I'm making into my purpose. And so that it was very painful for me to learn that, because when I look back on my career, there's so many initiatives, there's so many things that I can think of that I poured my heart into that were successful, that are still successful in those organizations today. That's okay. That does also, give me some validation in terms of, I created that. That was something that I did. They're still doing that. That's great. But what I'm saying is make sure that you have something that is yours that no one can take. What you're doing that brings you joy. And it doesn't have to be something that generates income, but it brings you joy and it's bringing you closer to that breakthrough and like, oh, this is my purpose. This is what brings me passion. Because I'm a believer that, when you master something, when you put your heart and your soul and you master something, it doesn't matter if master cleaning floors. If you master that and you're the best at cleaning floors, you can become a millionaire cleaning floors if you put soul into it. So that's where I'm starting to shift, that's where I'm on the cusp of shifting that mindset and being like, it's okay. that I have an employer. That's great. That's a great experience. However, I also need to have something that is my legacy, because I can't leave that legacy for my children. What I did at work, they're never going to know that. But they see me in action doing the things that I love. And so that's one of the things that I learned that I wanted to pass along, because something that is helping me in those periods where I'm not getting that validation within my work environment. I'm not getting that validation within something that I'm involved, something that I'm involved in externally. I have to have things like going on internally that I'm like, okay, I'm building towards this, and I find joy in this. So
Yes. I love that. Such great points, Lizzie. I mean, you're talking a lot about hobbies and your interest and it not being all tied up into work. I learned so much from my clients and previous leaders that I've had the privilege to work with. And someone told me something one time, and that's the thing, right? Someone tells you something one time, and it just sticks with them for years. And if you're lucky, they actually come back and tell you that because it's really, for me, very rewarding. That's how I bring out my radiance, right? Is by collaborating with others and seeing how they really wrestle with their belief system and what's holding them back and what's propelling them forward. And so, really kind of owning, for the longest time, my son is going to be 21 in just a few weeks. And that time just flew by. And I know it's so cliche. Everybody's listening is like, I know, I know, I know. But as a parent, even, right? Like, you're the CEO of that kid's life from birth to at least 18 generally. And now that he's in his last year of college and he's getting his kind of affairs in order and ready to embark in his life adventures, really kind of saying, well, gosh, was he my hobby? And now that he's kind of going on, right? The best compliment that you can get being a parent is seeing your child being self-sufficient, and he's self-confident, and he is very unlike me in many ways, right? I've always worn my heart on my sleeve, and I've had to work through efforts of not taking things personally, and really kind of going through that struggle. And just seeing him so self-assured is such a payment back to me, right? Like that. Not, I give him 100% of that credit, of course, but just to have that confidence and that ability to go out and face the world. And he has a very clear work-life balance. He's a Gen Z. I'm a Gen X. So, Gen Xers are like, just keep it coming, keep it coming. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way. And so there wasn't really a lot of time or space for hobbies, between building my career, raising my son. It just didn't have it. So now I'm kind of left with, well, wow, what's next? And so, I often find my hobbies are going to a leadership training, reading new books, exploring new avenues of positive psychology. And people are like, well, that's your career. And it's like, yes. And it's also, to your point, Lizzie, something that someone can't take away from me. No one can take away my education. I set out on a journey late last year that, even though I've been coaching for years, always been part of leadership development programs. I wanted to really check out the International Coaching Federation, and through that experience, what radiance that has brought me. Oftentimes, when I would train and things like that, it always incorporate pure learning. And this was no exception here, because I truly believe that we can learn so much from each other versus just, being lectured at. And so the diversity of thought that I've experienced in my schooling, the rigor behind coaching, that's one of those professions that isn't highly regulated. Of course, the ICF is really working to regulate that. And, I'm really pleased to say that I've made that my kind of my purpose, and my hobbies now is really just opening my horizons to new ways of living and doing, and knowing that, yes, your hobbies don't have to, be your lifestyle, but if you're really lucky in this life, it is. And, I am just so eternally grateful that I did the work. I asked myself the tough questions. What brings you radiance? Who brings you radiance? Again, I have to collaborate with others. And being a sole proprietor of my learning, a great learning business, who am I going to talk to? I mean, I've just met such wonderful coaches. Of course, my organization development network, the International Coaching Federation membership. These people are amazing, and it's not all work, right? It's not all work. It's about life. It's about balance. It's about me getting comfortable with putting myself out there. Even though I'm very extroverted and people think like, oh yeah, Karen, I know her really well. I'd always keep some things to the chest. So this podcast, right? Like it's like, ooh, it's a little bit raw, right? Like I'm eating my words now, right? Every time I do a leadership training, you gotta be vulnerable. The biggest reason that you're not vulnerable, and I can see from this experience, when you're vulnerable, you're a truth teller. Some people don't like that. And as I have matured, physically aging, and also just wisdom, I hope, after these experiences, I got okay with saying, you know what? I was in that place for that certain period of time and accomplished X, Y, and Z. And I developed the people around me to where hopefully they're in a better place than I found them. And also, um, I wasn't meant to be there forever. It always reminds me of that saying, right? Like you meet people or you have experiences for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I am literally just not listening to the universe if 3 layoffs in 4 years isn't telling me, do your thing, Karen. So that's really kind of part of what brings me radiance, as well as, nature. I mean, again, I love listening to audibles or podcasts and walking. Again, I have so many people around me that inspire me and develop me. And if you're paying attention, it really helps you learn and grow. So, Lizzy, what brings you radiance?
Yeah, I think for me, what brings out my radiance is being a part of a creative collective. So, growing up, I was the daughter of an artist and an army veteran. Two people at the complete opposite ends in terms of personality, the way that they go about life. And I inherited something from each of them. And most of my life, I felt that I had these incompatible strengths. So, like my mother, I am a creative. I have to create. But like my father, I have to have organization. Everything has its place. And so that's just, what I picked up from them, what I inherited from both of them, in terms of, strengths that they instilled within me. And so to feel inspired, I need something that I call infinite boundaries. It, it's like my mind is always creating ways to organize chaos and even how to repurpose discarded things into something that's more beautiful than what it was before. So I truly believe that my service to you all, and my service to humanity is to create different avenues that allow people to creatively express their transformative experiences that will hopefully inspire others to seek their true purpose. I remember at one point, early in my 20s, I wanted to create documentaries because I've always been so intrigued about learning what other people have gone through and the way that that changed them, and how that pressure and how that situation brought about a change in society, a change in a family, a change in a culture, or what have you. And just how you even respond to someone else's story is that you get that view into your own life to say, wow, if that person overcame this, I'm inspired to overcome this thing that's in my life. So for me, it's about serving other people. I can get quite introverted, so if I'm not careful, so I try to throw myself into missions or a cause that I believe in and that I feel is going to bring out the best in me. So that's how I find, the connection. I find creativity and doing things and where I'm serving others, whether that's, doing mission work or doing community work here locally. I just feel that that's something that has always exposed something new in myself that I can embrace and that I can be proud of and that I can feel that I'm making a difference. And so that's where I feel that my radiance is brought out the most. So so Karen, I think you talked a little bit about some of the things that inspire you, but can you dive a little bit deeper into who or what inspires you? Because I feel like inspiration is so important to finding our radiance.
Oh my goodness, 100%. I think it's so critical, right? Those sparks or those moments that you have in life where people are influencing you. When I had a lot of reflection time, obviously, now the last few years, and so I really just came to terms that truth tellers are true inspirations to me. And so I get probably almost as much as my coachees get sometimes, because even though it's their agenda, right? I'm asking them questions, I'm not sharing back anything. Their gifts of being raw and vulnerable is not only so admirable, but what they are saying is shaping others. And so, for me, it's that sacred space of thinking about thinking, right? So metacognition is the technical term for that, right? Being able to really think through and look at those paradigm shifts and kind of take that fork in the road. So, what inspires me are people that just wake up and say, you know what? No more. I'm not, this is how people are going to treat me. This is the value system that I have set up. I am not going to further make excuses for why I stay in situations, whether it be your organization, your relationships, that do not serve me. I'm not going to be less than myself. Again, I've been told, right, that like people can hear me from like a building away. So, right, I get a little loud, right? When I get passionate, I'm not yelling, I'm just excited, right? So my tone gets really loud. And, for a while I was self conscious about that. And I was like, why? Why take that away? And again, I think over the years, you mentioned too that pressure. Oh, and that pressure is so true. That's how diamonds get created, right? It's not from just, taking it easy and not stretching your, comfort zone. As long as you're staying kind of in your realm of strengths and you have your guiding principles in place, but I think the first question that I asked myself that I think others might benefit from asking themselves is, what am I for? Right? Like, what is it in life that is serving me? I'm really paying attention to, where is my energy going? Is it things that I'm saying yes to because it seems to look good? And I'll give you an example of what saying, hey, I am a great learning. This is what I do. I do leadership consulting, organization development consulting. I do leadership coaching, right? And I put on workshops. I focus on communication. I focus on strengths work through Gallup Strengths. These are the things that I do because I truly believe it, and it inspires me when I hear other strengths coaches, when I hear people really turning their life around. And like I said, not tolerating circumstances or behaviors that they're no longer willing to deal with. But in order to do that, right, you've got to, again, ask yourself that tough question of, what do I value? What am I for? How much is on my plate? Is it too much, right? Are you engulfing yourself to be so well rounded and have all the hobbies and have all of this? There's also nothing wrong with sitting on your patio and having a damn glass of wine. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, I'm surrounded by overachievers, right? And so, it's okay to take those breaks. In fact, it's really necessary to take those breaks and realize, am I ramping up in my career? Am I ramping down in my career? Well, I think our shifts, our focuses shift. That's what I was trying to say. Our focuses shift through the years. And I think that sometimes we're an autopilot and we don't stop and check it out. And so what I do to inspire myself is have those pivotal moments throughout the week where I'm journaling, where I'm taking them out. And I know like these are not new ideas or new concepts, right? Like I'm not giving you tools you don't know. And maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't work for you. But there's something about putting pen to paper makes things become very clear. So inspiration's all around me. As I said, right, I'm inspired. If anyone's familiar with the book Positive Intelligence, right, they talk a lot about, like your mind and how to kind of clear your mind a little bit. I call it Control Alt Delete. Like, if your computer or phone's acting up, or you just shut it off and turn it back on. I feel like that's my experience for sure, and that inspires me when I'm looking at some beautiful flowers outside. I go to the Flower and Garden Festival at Epcot, and I'm just surrounded by awe. And I think that in today's world, to be inspired, at least for me, I need a little awe in my life. And I need a little downtime. I hear people and myself too, right? Like, oh, like I got such a great idea when it was the middle of the night and I woke up for a second. Because we're not so worried putting on pretenses and having to craft the perfect answer or, you know, oh, this is how I'm supposed to show up in this arena of my life. And this is how I'm supposed to show up in that arena of my life. There's transformations all around, right? Like, how do we continue to stay connected in a very disconnected world? How do we transform ourselves? The blind spots that I found was that at some point in the world, I just started to care more about what other people thought than I cared myself of what I thought. And being, again, I'm nearly an empty nester. I have a whole nother next chapter of my life, and certainly health scares, right? Health scares will do it for you. I had a moment where I've always been healthy, and December the 8th, I really saw my life a little bit differently. Not dramatically. Everybody says, oh, if you have a near-death experience or whatever, like you have this light switch that turns on and you dramatically change. And I honestly validated myself because I am living authentically of late. And even before, it's not like I wasn't truthful. I was feeding myself the truth that I thought I should have been feeding myself, right? Like, you work really hard, you're going to get promoted, you're going to, life doesn't always play that way. And so I really liked what Lizzy said too. Whether you're monetizing it or not, finding your place in this world, that's yours, right? And that's what makes you complete, is really important.
I love that. I love that so much. And, with, going back to just in your experience, Karen, working for other people, working for yourself. I mean, each of those have their own pros and cons. But one thing that I can say when it comes to your radiance, when you are working for an employer, one of the things that we, as you had mentioned, worrying about what other people think of you, that is something that is taught in the corporate world where, you have a performance review. Somebody's going to tell you what they think of you, even though they may or may not know your day to day, what you're really contributing, all of these factors, right? But at one point you're subject to someone else's opinion. Um, so that starts to create that awareness of, oh, I have to be aware of myself. I have to, come across a certain way so that I can get, you know, something out of that, whether that's a promotion or just a good performance review. Also, there's something that I see a lot of, and it's talking about your brand. Well, what is your brand? How do you want to come across? And there's all these tricks. I'll call them tricks. So, like, that's out there so that you can come across a certain way, so that you can, exude your confidence or whatever it is that that you're trying to fool people really into thinking that you're something that you're not. And I just want to talk about that because that is not, I just want to make it clear that is not where you rediscover your radiance on lines of things. So we're not here, I don't care what anybody thinks about my brand. I just want everyone to know that, you know, what you think about my performance. I know what I do. I know what I don't do. Okay. But that's where when we start to go on this journey and we want to go on this journey and we want to say, you know what? yeah, it's important what I get on my review because I need my job or I enjoy my job or whatever it is in your situation in the season of your life. But again, the best way, as Karen said, is finding that transformation is in those moments when you're not doing those things, when you're not worried about what other people think about you. You know, when Karen's at Epcot looking at the flowers, she's not caring about her brand in that moment. And that's when she's being flooded and she's getting the inspiration and she's getting that creative juice, as my mom calls it, to just open up to new possibilities. And I think that, we sometimes, whether it's subconscious or we're aware of it, we're conscious, we try to, we get to this point where we try to put on a mask and we try to protect ourselves. We try to protect those authentic things about ourselves because we fear rejection and we fear, uh, even sometimes financial consequences of being a truth teller, telling our truth. And so that's where we need to start to look at that and just say, it's okay to have a brand. I'm not saying, don't have a brand every year, but your brand is not something that you can create. Your brand is just who you are, being that authentic self and knowing how to communicate that authenticity instead of just mimicking and modeling what we see other people doing. Success to be for you, we have to define what success is in our own life. And for some people, success, can be monetary. For other people, it can be time. They're like, you know what, I just want to have enough to get by, but my time is important. I want to have time to do the things I love and spend time with people I love. So it just really depends on what is your definition of success, because I feel like that is our North star, and it gets so cloudy and it gets so fuzzy when we're looking on the social medias, we're looking on LinkedIn, we're like, oh my gosh, she got promoted to a chief officer. Like, we went to college together. I'm only a coordinator in my job. Like, you start to compare yourself. You start to see, well, what is this person doing? What is it about them, that they're doing these things? And then we start to spiral out of control as we're striving to be somebody else and living somebody else's story. And so I feel it's important just to say to everyone, it's okay. Define your own success. It doesn't have to match what the world thinks, what I think, what Karen thinks, and that's okay. Just start there. If you don't know where to start there, because that was the biggest thing for me. I had to sit down and say, okay, what is success for me? What does that mean for Lizzie Garcia? And that's where I started to see the biggest breakthroughs from there.
Yeah, wow, you're talking about purpose, right? Kind of what is your reason for being? What is comparison? It's so innate in us humans. It's like almost impossible to not compare ourselves. And you bring about in a journey, again, paradigm shifts, right? Changing the way you think about things. That was kind of my moment of transforming my being. It's like, wait a minute, I love I love to connect with people, right? I love to witness and see them wrestling with an idea and then saying, "Wow, now I get it. Now I get why I haven't gotten to my destination point that I wanted." Or, "Oh, as I started to do that, guess what? You can change your mind." I don't know about you, but that was kind of like a mind blow for me. I had a very specific resume in mind of like how my life was going to go. And for years it did, right? Like, I mean, even personally, right? Like, okay, I went to school, I graduated, got a husband, got a house, had a baby. That is just what you are supposed to do. And then build my career, right? And check, check, and check. But then when I really realized it, I've been divorced since 2007. So we know that like just because it fits a resume doesn't mean that that's for you or serves you. And whether you're a coordinator or a CEO of a company, and what you bring has value. And that is to me the greatest gift and the way of being for me is that realization that, like Lizzy said, your personal brand is your personal brand. And learning to get comfortable in your own skin is probably the hardest work around. Because when you don't get comfortable in your own skin and you start to meet up to other people's expectations of what that looks like, when there's differences in thought and opinion, everybody likes to say, oh, we love diversity of thought. And then when it comes crunch time, it's like, no, you think differently than us. And, like, it's not a blame game. Our brains are actually designed that way, right? Like, we always look for shortcuts. We always likes attract likes. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole, like, birthplace of bias, right? We know this. And what sets us apart is that time and that space and that reflection and understanding, where do I feel psychologically safe? Is this for me or is this not for me? And one of the biggest kind of aha moments that I had was, oh, I have a business. I have to have a website. I have to advertise. I have to do all of these things. And to your point, Lizzy, right? Like, I'm taking little pieces of what people do and just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just stopped and I'm like, please, I mean, I am not bashing anyone. I think it's wonderful when I see the beautiful workshop pictures and stuff, but I'm just like, I'm in the workshop. I'm present. I'm not taking a selfie, right? Like, I don't want to do that. And, like, actually the website developer that I'm doing is like, we need more of those. And I was just doing something and I had it in my mind like I was going to do it and it just didn't feel right. And so I said, you know what? My website doesn't have it. My website doesn't have it. It is what it is. And again, that's probably another purpose of this podcast is to get to know me, right? Who am I? I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That took me a really long time to be okay with. What do you mean you don't like me? I like everybody and I get along with everybody. What do you mean you don't like me? And like it or not, right? Like if I can only go as far as you're willing to go, and vice versa, right? If somebody is like 10 planes ahead of me and I'm just like not, it's not going to be a fit, right? But kind of like learning and growing together is really important. So Lizzy, I know we kind of talked a lot about transformation and connection. How do you connect with others?
Yeah. So the closest connections that I have are because we experienced something in life together. So I grew up in a small town. I have really deep roots there. I've learned very early on that connecting with others is enriching. If we have connected, you can tell me something very intimate about my background because we lived life together for a brief moment or over a period of time. I'm not a lukewarm person. I have always taught myself to live in extremes. So either you know me, you know a lot about me, or you don't know me. It's a lot like that. So I'm the type of person where I will start out with small talk when we first meet, but I rapidly progress the situation within 10 to 15 minutes of conversation. I'm going to know where you were born, who your family is, how many siblings you have, your grandma's name, all of that. I'm just way too curious of a person. I've always been curious about people. And I just don't have my guard up in that way when it comes to getting to know people. Um, that's something that brings out my radiance. And as a matter of fact, if I am reserved around you, that is a big, big red flag that there's something about you that makes me uncomfortable. So anyone who knows me knows that no one kind of knows me. We either met in class, we met at church, we worked, you sat next to me on an airplane, or any other opportunity that brought you within arm's reach of me for longer than 15 minutes. We'll have a connection. And like Karen, it did take me a long time to be okay with, okay, not everybody likes me, my authentic self, and that's okay. But what I found is that consistently striving to live in our authenticity when we're connecting with others helps us to find the right connections, helps us to find those deep connections to where we're always searching for those people that, Karen, you said it earlier, either you're in our life for a reason or a season. When we're living in that authenticity, we are quickly able to identify people that are in our lives for a reason. And that's how Karen and I met. I mean, 4 months, come on, 4 months uh, worked together. And it's been 4 years that we've had an incredible friendship. And, she's most certainly been there for me. And it wasn't this, it didn't take a long time for us to connect and for us to form a strong bond. And so I know, I was reading a study recently where, a lot of people are suffering from loneliness, and that really broke my heart. And I've been there, where I was feeling really, really lonely. Uh, and so I just anyone who's feeling that and anyone who's struggling to connect with others, I just encourage you to not give up. It really does. For me, it started in me being okay with being authentic and being okay with being rejected by people because I'm not their cup of tea. But on the flip side of that, being that authentic person, immediately, I think, Karen, when we met, it was just like us, sparks flew, where it was just like, okay, we're like minded, we get along, we're on the same wavelength, and it just takes opening yourself up and being vulnerable in your authenticity. And I just really recommend that because it's hard. Sometimes it's not easy to connect with others. But this is how I met. This is how I've found, people close to me. And I don't necessarily have, a huge list of friends. I've never been a person that has like a huge group of friends, but the ones that I do have bring so much joy into my life. It's not about the quantity; it's really about the quality. And I found these people because we seriously have something in common that just keeps us connected. No matter how much time passes or what season we're in, it's like we get back together and that connection is still just as strong as it was. So that's my experience. That's how I connect with other people. How about you, Karen?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, same. So I have a best friend who's over in California, and she and I have created this cadence of every week. We both have master class subscriptions. And it's kind of to your point, right? Like hobby versus professional, we kind of vacillate depending on what we're feeling. I mean, we just did a podcast on like, how to arrange your closet and how that, declutters your mind. And so, you know, all of the different exposure, I even saw like the Martha Stewart one. So it's like, it just all these things like, I didn't know that about Martha. Because again, people, we have our personas, right? Like, how do we, maintain that connection with others is it's about sharing and opening up our experiences with one another. And you're probably thinking like, yeah, that's all fine and good until you get burned. And I can speak for myself, and I know Lizzie's had some opportunities as well that, well, I bared the truth and I got burned, right? Like I felt like I got penalized in some way. And, through a lot of learning and reflection, sometimes rejection is the best thing you can ever get. And it really puts you back on a path of finding your genuine self, staying true to your purpose and your values. And at the end of the day, that wasn't for you. And so, if someone's going to defy your, confidence or, maybe share things that you didn't want, spread around or whatever, that's on them. And, part of that is just kind of really recognizing again, who are your people? And, some people have that mindset, like, let's, oh, we're like the same in many ways. We're also very different in many ways. And I've really started to have more conversations just about the topics for the podcast and things like that. I'm discovering and learning so much more about Lizzy. She is just more than what we are alike. We also have such divergent kind of experiences and topics. And I just relish that. I enjoy getting that. And that's truly how I stay connected and how I get inspired is by doing that and noticing my energy, noticing your energy, really documenting, where am I using my talents, where am I not? But Lizzy, I know we've had so much fun together already this morning, and I know the time is slipping away. We really wanted to commit to, about 20 to 30-minute podcast. I think that we failed miserably this time. I think we're at like, 45, 50 minutes. Just we're talkers. Sorry. But right, we're going to be unapologetically us, and that's who we are, and we wanted to really connect with you. Hopefully, you experienced some similarities, or you're like, that's never happened to me, or it hopefully triggered something for you in a positive light or way to say, am I living authentically? Am I living my purpose? Do I know what my purpose is? Those are the kind of questions that you really want to ask yourself. What can I do each and every day that's just mine? I think those were some of the kind of highlights from our conversation today. Love to kind of see in the comments once we get this posted, what were some of your highlights? What did you discover? Are you rediscovering your radiance now? Have you already discovered it and you're living with it? Or if you just haven't even, hit the iceberg at all, you haven't even been able to get there, because we go 500 miles an hour in life, there's no judgment. It just is.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in, as it's going to be an amazing, incredible journey. We're going to get some guest speakers lined up over the next few months and just really dive into some topics a little bit deeper. Some of the things we touched up on today, but we most certainly want to dive deeper into this to rediscover our radiance. So stay tuned. If you like what we're doing, if you like Rediscover Radiance, subscribe to our podcast, do all the things and all the doings that you need to do in order to help spread the word and bring light to others around you. Take care, and we look forward to rediscovering our radiance in our next episode.
Thanks for listening, and remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits. Like, share, and subscribe to stay radiant.